A sense of accomplishment pervaded my being as I left the area of Buckland. It held an odd space in my mind, existing on the edge of Bree-land physically, but also socially. The outside influence of the Shire gripped Buckland tightly, warping it and making it truly unlike any other settlements I had so far encountered. The true extent of this influence remained elusive, however, and would remain so until I was able to explore the Shire proper, a tantalizing prospect. But for now, my focus remained fixed on Bree-land, which still offered a plethora of opportunities for me to help. The most immediate was to report back to Strider. I had learnt much from Lenglin, the ranger posted near Buckland, sent to watch over this Frodo Baggins and his companions. A matter about a ring in his possession was now under scrutiny. Some Crabine, spies of the ever-present enemy, had overheard news of it and fled into the old forest. Multiple excursions into these dark woods had given me some confidence, but not filled me with it, and Lenglin's desire to find these Crabine appeared slightly mad to me, a truly impossible task. But Strider was a more influential figure than I, and I hoped that he would have an answer. My returning ride toward Bree took me past Outlaw's Haven, along the dark eaves of the old forest, and right through the site of Adso Haybank's future inn. I thought it prudent to stop by, letting Adso know his caravan that he had sent on to Buckland for supplies had met with great success, and would shortly be returning, stocked full with the necessary goods.
What do you need?
Ah, Haybank, good to see you again. Wait, Adso, it's me. I spent days here helping you. What do you mean you're finally glad to meet me? The Hobbit had completely forgotten who I was. News of the aid I'd given his caravan in Buckland had spread before me, but it all felt hollow and dull. Could my actions really be forgotten so quickly? I pinned this strangeness to possible stress. I had heard running an inn could be most difficult. Perhaps building one was even more so. Continuing on, I passed the Greenway crossing and was greeted by the welcoming arms of Bree. Passing the west gate imbued in me a sense of security not felt since I had left to meet with innkeeper Barlaman Butterbear's third and final contact, Adso. Wally's hooves clattered noisily against the wide cobbled streets, and before I knew it, I had ridden under the inn gate and was stood before the homely Prancing Pony Inn. Pushing my way through its heavy door, I was affronted by the familiar smell of beer, fire smoke, and various cooking meats or bubbling stews. The tidal wave of comfort knocked me flat into a sturdy chair before the fireplace, and I allowed myself a brief moment of respite to rest and warm my tired feet. Next, I spoke with Barlaman Butterbear. His kind words of encouragement were welcome, but I didn't want to keep the busy innkeeper from his duties, so plunged further through the twisting halls of the inn towards Strider's room.
You bring dire news. Listen well.
This ring was proving to be of much more import than I had initially assumed. Strider was gravely concerned that news of it had spread. It seemed the enemy was looking for the trinket. I hesitated to guess that it might be magical, possibly made by elves in eons past. I was beginning to feel a part of some legend, but stifled my excitement. Strider held no gleam in his eyes, and his expression was deadly serious. Thankfully, he knew of someone who could find these Crabine. Tom Bombadil. He was known by different names to each of the races of Middle-earth. This renown meant that he could only be an elf of great power, or, if I was to be quite so lucky, maybe a wizard. He lived within the old forest, which added to his allure, and the growing sense of my involvement with something far greater than I, a legend of old, grew threefold. Strider's familiarity with this Tom raised him higher in my estimations too, and I vowed to not let him down. As I drew closer to the old forest, I was struck with the thought that I had heard of this Tom Bombadil before. By a clear flowing spring in the forest, I had encountered Lady Goldberry, a beautiful and wholly unplaceable being. She had spoken of her Tom, and described him as the Master. Could she be the wife of this Tom Bombadil? Strider's belief that he would be able to track these Crabine certainly aligned well with the idea that he could be the master of the forest. These ideas kept me company as I charged through the ominous, but fast becoming familiar, old forest, until I came upon a most wondrous sight. In the old forest between Buckland and the Barrow Downs stands a welcome sight, the home of Tom Bombadil and Goldberry the River Maiden. Weary travellers will find this an unusually pleasant retreat amongst the ancient and often foreboding forest and the mist-shrouded downs beyond. Tom Bombadil himself is a person who defies specific explanation, though his intentions clearly favour the free peoples of Middle-earth. He is pleasant and affable, warm and welcoming, yet undeniably powerful and as ancient as Middle-earth itself. From the modest surroundings of well-tended gardens and delicious meals, Tom Bombadil commands the respect of all around him, from the creatures of the forest to the very land and trees themselves. What struck me most about the home of Tom Bombadil was not its foreign nature. It was not that such a homely abode could exist in such an oppressive environment. As the ageless trees lurked in the shadows just outside of the clearing with its well-tended gardens, pools and mown grass, as the stars looked on from above through the opening made by their reverence for Tom and his house, what truly struck me was how much it belonged. I found Tom outside, and he proved to be a most curious fellow. He was a busy man, yet not in a hurry. He spoke in rhyme, had a rich voice, and struck an odd figure with his big yellow wellies. I was still unsure of what he was, but my earlier suspicions that he was the one spoken of by Goldberry were confirmed, with him even signalling that they were married. He must have had some sort of power, as he was not daunted by the task of finding the crabine. All he asked in return was that I collected some lilies for Goldberry. Said to be near a strange old man prone to dangerous tendencies, I decided to be as careful as I could. It soon became apparent that this old man willow was a tree of unknowable age. It squatted languidly on the bank of the Withywindle, an unignorable presence, watching over the lilies. Far from being relieved at this discovery, I made sure to keep a good distance and stay far away from any reaching roots. I did not want to upset this great willow.
Tom Bomb, jolly Tom, Tom Bombadillo. Hey-dole, merry-dole, ring-a-dong-dillo.
Tom was impressed by my efficacy, and I matched this with my own at his speedy discovery of the escaped crabine. His jolly and relaxed demeanour only made his sense of urgency more worrying. His description of their current location only exacerbated the state of my unease. The old barrows, supposedly where the restless walked. I had heard murmurings of this place, legends and stories of undead wights among ancient stones. My preparation for time spent in the old forest, while diligent and taxing, now seemed inadequate, but my desire to see what lay over the next hill proved to be stronger. In the awkward and uncomfortable space between the old forest and the northern Barrow Downs, I came across a small ragtag group of humans and a halfling. They were in a sorry state and clearly down on their luck. I spoke to them all and, finding the solutions to their issues to be within the very same Barrow Downs where these crabine would be found, headed uphill and into the vast, dreary hills of the northern Barrow Downs. Already inhabited by the race of man during the First Age, it was during the Second Age when Dunedain from Numenor arrived that these hills and monoliths came under the reign of Arnor. After the death of Earendur in 861 and the subsequent splitting of the kingdom, the Barrows instead became part of Cardolan, one of the emergent three kingdoms left in the ruins of Arnor. Much later, in 1409 of the Third Age, the last of the Dunedain of Cardolan were driven into the Barrow Downs and the Old Forest by the forces of the Witch King of Angmar. Though the last prince of Cardolan was killed, its people remained in and around the Barrow Downs for another 200 years, until they fell victim to the great plague that devastated much of Middle-earth. Afterwards, the Witch King sent fell spirits to the barrows to raise the barrow wights that haunted the area and gave it a dark reputation among the Bree folk for many years. After the stifling, oppressive nature of the old forest, here atop these rolling hills and amongst the leering stones, I felt vulnerable and exposed. The forest had been ominous and certainly dangerous, but it felt deserved. I was an intruder there and had to act with respect for the land around me. Here, I felt displaced. It all felt wrong. The earth had been twisted and tormented by these fell spirits and had eventually given up, allowing their fetid feet to tread all over its green grass. Here, I felt a strong sense of mourning above all. I immediately went about my duties to the strange expedition I encountered just at this land's border. I did not understand the full meaning of their being here. From what I could gather, they were being led by Reginald Sickleweed. He had been here many times before and thus had ignored warnings of the increased evil stemming from the Barrow Downs. Managing to push through to the area they now occupied, they had realized that they were stuck. To even attempt a retreat back to Bree, they needed to regain their strength and rest. But due to the bar guests' haunting howls, they could not find any.
Would you do something for me?
He requested that I put as many down as I could, and while here, alleviate some of the pressure on Bree by eliminating a few of the whites too.
Stay a moment.
To aid their possible escape, Sal Hayward alerted me to another issue.
Could I speak with you a moment?
The group had already lost some members to disease. Believing the cause to be the rats and insects that plagued the Downs, I made it a priority to clear the nearby area of them. Having recently discovered a willingness to learn of the nearby land, Tobold Leafcutter had joined the excursion to gather broken stones, covered in runic letters. I promised to bring some back for him, especially ones from around the Dead Spire, as he called it. As well as this, he wished for evidence of his journey here from the entrances to the barrows of 3 important men of Cardinal. We had come a long way since our first encounter with a wight, raised to existence by the evil dwarf lord within Ostbaranor. Though we were then accompanied by the skilled ranger Torthan, Humphrey and I's gain in experience more than made up for it. We cut a neat path through the bony, haunting remains of the whites, and though the bar guests were more frightening in appearance and their howls more deafening, they were not much more of a threat than the wolves we had spent so much time up against. As for the rats, the insects and their plague, I just felt confident that our tale would not end with me dying to an illness. Surely a less pathetic end was planned for me. Eventually, in a quiet corner of the northern Barrow Downs, I found the Crabine roosting amongst the dreary lady that Tom had mentioned. She wore similar garb to the strange hooded men I had seen and heard of allied within the Blackwold Brigands. I kept my guard up and approached. After a brief tirade, she let loose her fell birds on Humphrey and I. Luckily, she made it clear that the information Strider was so concerned of, that of the ring and its bearer, was yet to be shared with anyone else. I was able to stop the spread of this secret, here and now. In the midst of all this, more of the world's mystery was unveiled. A wandering spirit, peaceful yet disturbed, had awoken among the gravestones that littered the Barrow Downs. It spoke in riddles, a skill that I had never mastered. All I could glean was that it had been awoken by the very same passage of evil spoken of by Reginald Sickleweed and hinted at by Tom Bombadil. It felt the pull of its brother, and also its ring and shield of old. I decided to keep a stern watch for this thing's barrow. Perhaps there I would learn more. Finding the ground to be disturbed at the entrance to a nondescript barrow, I connected it to the spirit's recent awakening. Within, I found an angered wight whose defeat yielded to me what I assumed to be the spirit's ring. The ring would of course be too easy. More held the spirit here in this strange form, neither living nor dead. From its further riddling, I puzzled that it and its brother had buried treasure nearby, which was now surrounded by more risen wights. I presumed that it wanted these wights slain and the area rid of their stirrings. With this completed, and upon my return, I felt I was beginning to understand more of this spirit's plight. It did not seek only for its own absolution, but also for its brothers. Unfortunately, the next step to aid with this lay among the southern Barrow Downs. I was hesitant to push further into these hideous lands without first returning to the doomed expedition and Tom Bombadil, but I made note of this bone man that the spirit spoke of, and my eagerness to see the end of this tale did not subside.
Dear me, please don't leave yet.
Finally, all that was left to do was help Bob's daughter,
Stay and have some tea.
Lalia, return to Bree. As Bob had suspected, she was indeed here to find Butterbear's so-called last prince. Childish fantasies of becoming his princess had placed the helpless child in a pit of danger. It was a miracle that she remained alive. The naiveness of childhood had of course also spread to her willingness to retrieve a cloak she had lost, so that became our first priority. This became a lengthy ordeal, with Lalia frequently losing her bearings and consistently misremembering where her cloak now lay. I was reminded of the mysterious Sarah Oakheart, who I had rescued from the Blackwold hideout on the outskirts of Staddle. She and Lalia shared a similar average velocity. Having now finally recollected her cloak, I thought that our luck was beginning to turn, and that we were nearing the exit to this land. But alas, we were instead ambushed by the one and only Prince. I actually believed it to be for the best. Seeing what a monstrosity this thing was, Lalia was able to reject it, I was able to defeat it, and we were all able to be confident that she would not be returning to the Barrow Downs anytime soon. Now, all that was left to do was escort the young lady out of the Barrow Downs, which was easy enough, and before long the three of us stood in the midst of a gully overlooking the calm southern fields of the Bree-lands. Seeing before me fields I had already tamed and put to rights, combined with Lalia's own survival within the Barrowlands, I was not overly worried for her ability to return to Bree on her own. So let her go on her merry way, only keeping her cloak to show to her father. Before long I was striding back into the bear encampment occupied by the hodgepodge expedition from Bree. I felt relieved to be turning my back on the ghastly Barrow Downs and harboured hope that I would not be immediately returning there.
What do you need? What do you need?
Reginald Sickleweed was pleased at the reduced number of wights and bar guests, and Bob was glad to hear of Lalia's safety.
A lovely day, isn't it?
For the first time, I agreed with a halfling's criticism at another's lack of this hobbit sense. If whatever it was reduced the chance of young children running headlong into the Barrow Downs, then I wished for her to gain some too.
Greetings.
Sal Hayward expressed thanks for my extermination of the local disease carriers, the rats and insects, but also informed me that their original force was split in twain when they had initially entered the Barrow Downs.
Might I take a moment of your time?
She hoped the others were still alive and urged me to lend my aid there, atop what she called Dead Man's Perch.
What can I do for you?
I then spoke again with Tobold Leafcutter, eager to learn if he could make anything out from the stone fragments I had collected. The fragments I had found near the barrow entrances revealed little more than the men of Cardolin's fall into ruin and the subsequent plague.
What can I do for you?
Those I gathered from around the dead spire were even more useless, providing only short accounts of the men buried there.
Hello, friend. Could you help me with something?
Just before leaving, however, Tobold called me back. With a little more time to study the inscriptions on the stone, he had managed to form a vivid picture. 2 brothers had fought to recover a treasure of Cardolin and brought it here. During the plague, many of the sick were taken to a fortress named Ost Gorthad in the southern Barrow Downs. From here a terror rose and cursed the brothers for their theft. I left to seek out this treasure. Helping Tobold learn what he could and in turn how to stave the spread of this evil felt important, but more interestingly, the tale struck close to what I was beginning to uncover from the strange spirit I had stumbled upon earlier. Could he be one of these brothers? He had similarly mentioned a treasure, and the treasure I now sought was in the same place.
Greetings, friend.
The treasure yielded an ancient journal. It mentioned again the plague and how it killed a few men of Cardlin that remained. The book's author was tormented by dreams of Angmar, which presaged the dead walking the land once more. By now, it had become clear to me that Angmar had been an ancient enemy of Cardlin and the free peoples of Middle-earth. Its hand was now visible again, reaching into the heart of Bree-land, and I felt a burning desire to not let anything similar happen now as had occurred here all those years ago. Before I left to report back to Tom Bombadil, Tobold implored me to keep an eye out for ancient chalices buried in the Great Barrow,
Would you do something for me?
believing them to possibly have been made to help defend against creatures like the Barrow Wights.
Come, Derry-dole, can you hear me singing? Now let the fun begin, let us sing together.
From Andrast, the shepherd of the foul Crabine, I had learnt that the lord of the Nazgul had gone to some place called Othrongroth. I held hope that Tom Bombadil, who seemed to know so much of the surrounding land and its inhabitants, great and small, would know more of this place and possibly where it was located. I now knew of the other half of the ill-fated expedition to the Barrow Downs and was eager to help, but I had a feeling they would be in need of extensive aid, maybe now centered around the southern Barrow Downs, so decided to postpone my duties there for now. My brief enjoyment of my respite away from the Barrow Downs tasted all the more bitter when I learned of Othrongroth's better-known name, and understood that it would have to be my next port of call. Othrongroth, or better known as the Great Barrow.